Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Above the Rim Rundown, where we run down all things NBA. I am one of your hosts, Memo, and today I've got Hoops right beside me. How are we doing?
Overall, I'm doing okay. Same old. Pretty much just work. Um, and then after work, usually just do the same daily routine, go to the gym, have dinner, chill a little bit, and then repeat during the weekdays. And then usually weekends, try to catch up on rest.
We
What
did do
about you?
something
Have you been?
fun last weekend, though. That we kind of have to do an update, right? Because we talked about how we were going to a Quavo concert and how we were both excited about the concert. But what happened? Do you want to explain to everybody what happened?
Pretty much what happened was we showed up. Eights were supposed to open at 4 p.m., but there was a little bit of a delay and they didn't let us in until 4:30. So then ultimately we were able to go in, pretty much just chilled, did their thing for a little bit. Um, in the beginning, it's just small DJs and or just music playing from the intercom, like student body groups. Afterwards, we had a few of the side guests, and one of them, his name was Cody Ko, and then another guy, his name was Valentino Khan. And then ultimately, Valentino Khan is the guy who was supposed to be right before Quavo. He was performing, doing his thing, and we thought that it was about to be time Quavo to come on stage until the big announcement was made that Quavo wasn't able to make it due to trafficking issues or travel issues, whatever it was.
Yeah, don't say
Um,
trafficking issues. That's a whole big, different thing. That's like
yeah,
it's traveling issues. Like he's not doing trafficking.
yeah. Nonetheless, though, quote unquote traveling issues.
Yes.
A lot of people, a lot of people have like the doubts there, like because I believe probably it was traveling issues, but there could have been like other factors also. Um, Obviously, not too long ago, Quavo got really badly roasted by Chris Brown of all people, which wasn't a good look. Like, I was jokingly saying, what if he canceled the concert because he was too embarrassed by that roast? He didn't cancel it, but he didn't show up, so in a way, it's almost the same thing. But that was a little bit of a disappointment, but to make up for it, we still had a fun time there. It pretty much turned into a Valentino Khan concert instead. And at the very end, the school did decide to issue us refunds for the concert due to the fact that the main guy didn't show up.
Which
So
I
even though it
got the
was
other day,
disappointing,
luckily.
even though it was disappointing that we weren't able to get to see him, at the end of the day, there wasn't too many complaints because we ended up pretty much going to a free little fun festival event. So we made the most out of it, even though we, even though there were several unexpected factors that happened, we still had a good time. So overall, it was a fun day.
Yeah, it was definitely really fun to hang out with you last week. Uh, we got there early, so we were basically able to do almost everything we could have done. There were rides. We rode on the rides. We took photos. I had this very mid burrito that I'm still mad about. It was overpriced as hell. It was like $25, but the sauce they used in it was so whack that it ruined it. Uh, uh, I wanted a refund for the burrito, uh, not anything else. But yeah, the DJs were cool. Cody Ko um, was pretty good. Pretty surprising since that's not even what he's known for. He is mostly known for his YouTube stuff. So I didn't even know he was a DJ. I knew he made music, but I didn't know he was a DJ. You forgot to mention, etc. etc. Like, he was a great DJ. He was a surprise appearance, and good thing they had him on because like they needed to fill in time, obviously, because they knew Quavo wasn't gonna be there. They just didn't let us know until like it was basically time for him to supposedly perform, which he didn't. And then yeah, as he said, Khan like really carried it. He had a long, nice set. And it was fun. I liked his mixes. I thought his drops were cool. So overall, fun night, and we were able to basically enjoy it for free, not including the food, because I got my refund, so that's good. But okay, I guess we could talk some basketball since we got that done. Um, Another week of playoff basketball, the beginning of the second round, and I do notice that you have some notes about the Cavs versus Magic, their game seven. We could just quickly gloss over that since like it's already the second round, and we like throughout their entire series, like we both really didn't really care about it because it was by far the most boring. But like quick summary: Donovan Mitchell carries once again, 39 points. Paulo tried his best, but the supporting cast couldn't score, especially Franz Wagner, who was supposed to be the number two guy on the team, um, because of how bright his future seemed to be as a young guy. But during the playoffs, he really uh, did not show up. He's still young, so maybe in the future he'll be able to do more. But he really struggled. And yeah, now the Cavs are facing the Celtics. We'll talk about that later. But what were your thoughts on Game 7 of Cavs versus Magic?
I didn't actually watch this game. I kind of tracked the score a little bit throughout the course, and it was shocking to say the least. Obviously, the Magic flat out dominated the first half, going up as much as 18 points. But in the second half, they just completely choked the game away. And it was like utter shock to me how a Magic 18-point lead ultimately turned into a Cavs 14-point lead. And as you mentioned, Paulo tried to put the team on his back, putting a pretty good 38-point performance. But performances from others like Wagner, who only put up 6 points and 1 for 15 shooting, it ain't gonna cut it. And then Donovan Mitchell doing his thing, putting up 39 and very much needed to find a way to advance. And I would say that even though winning one series isn't really saying a lot, at least the Cavs were finally able to win a series post LeBron era. Because like they haven't had a lot of playoff success or success in general without LeBron James. But after they got Donovan Mitchell, they are at least like a playoff team to make the playoffs. Last year they got poorly upset by the Knicks in 5 games in the first round. This year, obviously, the Magic are not really that great of a team, but at least they found a way to win a series, so credit to them. And that set them up to play against the Celtics in the semifinals,
Which we will
which
talk
we will
about.
talk about.
Yeah, sorry for cutting you off. Um, but we'll talk about that later. Now let's move on to the second round, starting in the West Coast, the best coast, with Thunder versus Mavs. I was gonna say this was probably the best matchup, but to be honest, these second round games have been pretty good throughout most series. OKC versus Mavs. This one is 1-1 currently. OKC took the first game. Um, a big reason why is Luka. Like, Luka hasn't been like playoff Luka in the past. This not off season playoffs. So even though he was able to score like 19, 20 points, something like that, it wasn't efficient at all. And yeah, and the rest of the OKC Thunder did great scoring wise. I know Lou Dort was there, slowing down Luca as much as possible. But things changed in game two. Well, before I continue, like Luca, going back to Luca, he just doesn't seem 100% at the moment. I feel like there's something bothering him, but but looking at game two, I feel like it's still bothering him, but he was still able to step up. Came through with 29 points and helped the Mavs uh, get a not an upset win, but a critical win on the road. So now that it is going back to Dallas, and he was able to do that while Kyrie only had 9 points, which is not regular for Kyrie. Kyrie has been one of the most consistent and impressive playoff performers this year's playoffs. Um, so despite his scoring performance, they were still able to win game two, and now it's 1-1 going back to Dallas. So this is definitely an exciting series. Uh, I want the Mavs to win, but I did say last week that I think this series is gonna go seven, and the Thunder are gonna take it. And currently, it could be any team's game. Like it could be any team's series. I definitely do expect this going long. But what do you think about this series at the moment?
So far, obviously, a very shifty series. Game one, the Thunder won pretty handily. Early in the game, it was pretty close. Teams took jabs at each other with several lead changes, but in the middle of the second quarter, that's obviously when the Thunder took over and blew the game open. And for OKC, game one, they had a pretty good balanced scoring. Um, they had five guys in double figures. And honestly, the Mavs scoring balance wasn't bad either. They had five players in double digits themselves. But unfortunately, just OKC proved to be too much for the Mavs in game one. And they were able to dominate on a 22-point blowout. Second game, though, completely different story. The Mavs pretty much controlled the game from start to finish for the most part and showed their urge to tie the series up. Luka did his thing, putting up 29 points. PJ Washington had a breakout game too, with 29 of his own. And then Kyrie had a quiet game, only putting up 9 points, but he didn't need to do much. That's the best thing when the superstars don't need to do much, but and the team is still able to find a way to win from other players. Perfect. Um, but very reminiscent to round one against the Clippers. Obviously, they had a pretty bad game one that series, and then they bounced back to get a clutch game two win on the road to tie it 1-1 before going home. More of the same here.
That's a
Not the
pretty
best
good
performance game
point.
one.
I guess maybe
Yeah.
the Mavs just need game one to like test the waters before uh, actually like going into it. I guess. But yeah,
Teams
that's
tend to do that, honestly.
yeah, that's
Like,
true.
obviously, like LeBron's years in like Miami and Cleveland, a lot of times he would pretty much give his opponent game one, and then he'll gentleman sweep the other team afterwards, or like test things out, shall we say? Like try to get used to the matchup, see how they can do well here, 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 you name it, and then take them serious from there. But yeah, definitely so far the series has looked like very hard to predict who will win because in one, OKC was really dominant. You thought they would win maybe handily. Then game two, the Mavs turned around and they won pretty handily. And so far, it's been both both sides having commanding wins, and it's hard to predict who's going to win, but definitely should be a good one going forward. And now as the series shifts to Dallas, should be interesting. I would I would assume that these two teams are definitely going to go neck and neck for sure, and wouldn't be shocked if it goes seven, definitely at least six.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a series that you want to pay attention to because there's gonna be a lot of competitive basketball for sure. But is that it? Should we move on?
I think we are good for that series. We went pretty well in depth. Um, so our next series will be the other semifinals matchup in the Western Conference between the number two Denver Nuggets and the number three Minnesota Timberwolves.
This one's exciting.
And it's very exciting, and I will say probably a bit shocking for a lot of people too.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, game one was a pretty close game with several runs and momentum shifts. First quarter was dominated by the Wolves, going up by as much as 14 early. But then second quarter, the Nuggets went on a run and they were able to claw back and take the lead at the half. But then the third quarter, the Wolves were really able to make a run and they were able to get a lead. So then ultimately the fourth quarter, the Wolves dominated most of the way. They lost the lead momentarily, but then they rebuilt it and never looked back. And they had some really big monster performances that game from key guys. Ant putting up 43, Cat putting up 20, and then other key players like Nas Reed and Mike Conley also came through. And for the Nuggets, their players did respectable. Jokic was 32, MPJ 20, and Jamal Murray 17. Ultimately, the Timberwolves were able to get a key game one steal, so shout out to them there. Game two, so obviously the Timberwolves came in that game short-handed, having to go out without Rudy Gobert because he had a newborn son and he missed that game.
Congrats to him.
And yeah, congrats to him. And you thought that Nuggets might have like a big advantage there. They don't have to go up against two big elite big men now. They only have to go up against one, right? Oh, guess again. The Nuggets, like that game, they took a 2-0 lead by scoring the first basket of the game. From there was nothing that went their way. The Timberwolves just flat out dominated them in game two and did it with ease without Rudy Gobert, which was definitely shocking to many. But Timberwolves, their defense was tremendous that game, particularly in large part due to the lockdown defense of Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Jaden McDaniels. But everyone really showed up big on the defensive end. Um, like key blocks like Nas Reed was 4, Cat was 2, Ant was 2 steals and 2 blocks. And then the list goes on, honestly. It's just straight up domination by the Wolves that game. And scoring wise, like the two superstars, Ant and Cat, both put up 27. And then key guys like Nas Reed and Nickeil Alexander Walker put up 14. And then for Denver, lackluster performance. Jokic was very quiet that game and only putting up 16. But the biggest story was Jamal Murray. He got absolutely locked down that game, putting up only 8 points on 3 for 18 shooting. Not very good. Locked down the entire game. But on top of that was the way he handled things on the sideline. During like one play in the second quarter, he throws a heat pack and a towel at a ref. Like I don't get why he did that. But
It's
rightfully so, he got
because he's angry that his team is being blown out, and he's a big reason why. Right? You said he only scored 8 points. It was awful that game. He truly was, and he ended up throwing a tantrum. And he wasn't the only one that threw a tantrum either. Mike Malone was straight up screaming in the face of a ref. Somehow did not get a technical, even though Anthony Edwards got a tech in game one for uh, after a dunk. He just stared at his opponent. Like, that's it. That's all he got the tech for. So it's really weird how that played out. And yeah, it's not a good look for Jamal Murray at all. Like, we were talking about this earlier today, how uh, he was being questioned about uh, the Heat Pack incident from that game two, and he was saying that he owns up to it. He was sorry, but like every time a reporter wants to get more details from him, he'd get mad. He'd be like, "Next question. Let's talk about basketball. Next question." Just being very childish about it. Like it doesn't really seem like he's actually sorry about what he did because he could have like
He
mess.
isn't.
He isn't
Yeah.
right. He could have like injured someone. Like it was very close to Towns. He could have slipped on. Towns could have landed on the heat pack and slipped and rolled an ankle or something. Like it was honestly pretty dangerous. And he ended up getting 100K fine. But and although I'm for the sake of competition, I'm glad he didn't get suspended. It does feel like it's something that like should be like I don't know what's the word, but he should be
He,
suspended for it due to
I think that
his actions.
it's pretty clear and safe and obvious to say that the reason he didn't get suspended is because the playoffs and the Nuggets are down 2-0. The league knows that it's better if the series can get dragged out a little longer than if it were to be a 4-0 sweep, for example. So they decided not to fine him so they could have, for viewership reasons. And I think that's like happened a lot. Like for example, 2016 when Draymond Green kept on kicking guys in the groin. He probably more than likely should have been suspended in the OKC series, but because the Warriors were down 3-1, they decided not to because they wanted to see if that series could be extended. And then on the contrary, the Cavs were down 3-1 against the Warriors, and they're like, "All right, let's suspend him now, so we can extend this series." And ultimately, it's good that he did get suspended, but he probably should have got suspended earlier. Granted, the Warriors did lose that finals series. They probably shouldn't have even been to the finals. So point blank, my point is that I think that when it comes to like rules and stuff in the playoffs, the league definitely adjusts it a little bit to for like viewership purposes because they don't want their superstars sitting out unless it's actually beneficial to like viewership for extending a series like the examples I mentioned in the past. But yeah, what Jamal Murray did was just flat out dumb. Like, come on, dude. You had a bad game. Who are you trying to blame? There's really no one you can blame but yourself, man. Just own up to it and be better going forward. And speaking of which, it seemed like Jamal Murray had quite a bounce back in game 3. Matter of fact, like game 3 was pretty much the complete opposite of game 2. The Nuggets were the ones that dominated in that game, and they won by nearly 30. Um, but pretty much Timberwolves took like very very brief leads early in the first quarter. And aside from that, no looking back. Nuggets built a really big lead in the second, and at half they were up by 15. Ultimately, in the fourth quarter, they went up by as much as 34 and held on. It was an easy win, and it was obviously much needed because no team has ever come back from down 3-0. They know that. Everyone knows that. So they absolutely needed that game, and credit to them for delivering. So now that series is 2-1 and sets us up for a pivotal game 4. Now, that game is obviously going to be very important for both teams. Now, obviously for the Nuggets, If they're able to find a way to tie the series 2-2 going back home, they're in great shape because losing the first two games at home was obviously really so crushing for them. But then if they found a way to win the next two on the road, then they're back as front runners. But for the Wolves, definitely game four is also very important for them because they do not want to go back to Denver tied 2-2, losing home court advantage. And like a 3-1 lead obviously would not guarantee them to win series because we've seen several 3-1 comebacks in the past, including a few by the Nuggets in 2020. So it wouldn't be over, but at least it would put them in a much better position. So yeah, game four very crucial for both teams for different reasons. And it should be fun. And obviously, these last two games were flat out blowouts, one way or another. I don't expect that to be the case in game four. I expect that to be a much closer, hard fought game throughout. And I believe that it's going to go down to the wire. And it will be between which team will find a way to create the most stops and make the most clutch baskets at the end. So definitely look forward to that. When the series looked like it was 100% in the Wolves' favor, the Nuggets delivered here. So now we see whether they can keep that momentum going or if the Wolves are able to regain momentum. Yeah, honestly, this series has been pretty entertaining, I will say, despite the blowouts. The teams taking jabs at each other. Clearly, two of the top teams in the Western Conference or even the league in general. So it'd be fun.
Yeah, for sure. Like as you said, like even though there's been a couple blowouts, it's still weirdly a fun series to watch. I think it helps because of the personalities on both teams and the players, like Anthony Edwards being the most confident person in the world. The Timberwolves defense, I think we shouldn't overlook at all how insane their defense was, especially on game two, where they got Jamal Murray flustered, they got Jokic flustered. There's times where Jokic looked like he didn't know what to do, which is not normal for him. Uh, he's usually known for having such a high NBA or basketball IQ and know every step that he's got. He's like very calculated, but they flustered him a lot. Um, with all that said, like I did pick the Nuggets to win this series, but the Timberwolves they got me excited. They're really showing flashes of greatness right now, despite losing in a blowout today, which is not good. But like I think we said it last week. This is like an early Western Conference Finals. Like I'm sure either of these teams could make it to the finals, and it'd be really cool to see Anthony Edwards at his young age. Like I think he's only like 22, something ridiculous like that, in the finals. And if he is able to win as well, that's generational stuff. That's something that hasn't been done since like D Wade, being able to carry a team to a championship win at an early age. So yeah, I'm excited for the Timberwolves, but it's not over, right? The Nuggets are still championship caliber, still a championship caliber team, and they really need Jamal Murray to play like today, to continue playing like today, because so you mentioned he didn't have the best games, the first two games. He really hasn't been doing super well in the playoffs. Like in the versus the Lakers, he would have horrible halves, but somehow make game winners to win and break our hearts. Uh, and yeah, it kind of continued here, but in game three, Jamal Murray did step it up a lot, which is very needed. They need his scoring in order to help them defeat the team. So Another series that could go either way, but I'm very excited about this outcome. Uh, and okay, and yeah, one more thing. Shout out to Rudy Gobert. Like, even though he wasn't in game two, we all know that his defensive presence has really impacted the team throughout this whole season. Impacted game one for sure, but then game two, even though he wasn't there, the spirit of Rudy Gobert was there. They really came through with the defense there. So shout out to him. But I'm done yapping. We can move on to round two of the Eastern Conference matchups, starting with Celtics versus Cavs, which we talked about how this is possibly going to be a sweep, but we did also say that the Cavs were, like, comparing the Cavs with the Magic, that the Cavs were more likely to be able to win one game against the Celtics, and that's been done already. In game two, they've won a game against the Celtics. Game one, Celtics took it. So it's currently a 1-1 series, just like the first round for the Celtics against the Heat. It was a 1-1 series. So what are your thoughts on this very interesting start to a series that we kind of assumed the worst for the Cavs, but at the moment it doesn't look too bad?
So to start, this series is pretty much looking like a mirror reflection of round one against the Heat for the Celtics, quite literally. Because similar to that series, game one just never was in doubt. The Celtics flat out dominate from start to finish. And like it's like kind of crazy how similar the series is because from what I recall, that series game one, the Celtics jam out to an early lead, and then the Heat came back to take a brief lead before the Celtics redominated the rest of the way. Well, same here. Celtics jumped out early to a 12-2 lead straight out the gate, but then the Cavs come firing and they took a brief 2 point lead. That was all. Afterwards, the Celtics just took over throughout and they kept pushing. Went up by as much as 26 and ultimately won handily by 25 points. And perhaps the most frustrating part about this game for the Cavs is the fact that Jason Tatum really didn't have a crazy game. Put up a very lackluster 18-point performance. Um, and the fact that the Cavs still lost by 25 was obviously really bad. And a lot of that was due to the Celtics' other key guys stepping up, like Eric White putting up 25, Peyton Pritchard putting up 16, Drew was 14, and then Jaylen Brown led the way with 32. For the Cavs, Donovan Mitchell did his job. He put up 33, and then Evan Mobley put up 17. Darius Garland put up 14. Isaac Okoro put up 11. But everyone else really didn't do much that game. So that played a huge factor into the Celtics just flat out dominating game one. Game two, though, so actually game two started out looking no different. Celtics jumped out to an early 9 point lead, and you thought, all right, this is on its way to another blowout. Just call it a wrap. It's gonna be a sweep. Well, not quite. The Cavs ended up storming back, and they took the lead of their own. And the teams traded baskets, traded a few leads in the second. Ultimately, it was a tie game at the half. Second half, though, the Cavs just flat out shockingly took over in Boston. Um, I believe they never squandered a lead in the second half, and shout out to Donovan Mitchell for a huge game, per usual in playoffs, doing big things for that team. And very unexpected blowout win for the Cavs for sure, because like we definitely said there's a chance maybe the Cavs could win one game, but by no means did we think they would like flat out win in a blowout like this. We thought maybe it'd be like a really hard fought, grinded, close game to steal one. But shout out to them. they were actually shooting really good that game, making threes, and came very huge. They were able to handily win this game, 118 to 94, and now it is tied 1-1, shifting the series to Cleveland, reminiscent to the first round between the Celtics against the Heat. Um, Obviously, we know what happened afterwards. The Celtics won the next three, and it was a very short 4-1 series. So definitely not getting hopes up. It was just one game. Hopefully the Cavs can at least split the Cleveland games so that way it can be competitive going back to Boston for Game 5. But we shall see. I think that obviously the Celtics clearly should still be the better team, but we'll see what happens. Uh, the series shifting to Cleveland definitely will help the Cavs a little bit for sure. If I were to guess, I feel like the best would be the two team split. But we'll see what happens. Definitely has been a little bit shocking to say the least because many people probably thought it was going to be a flat out easy, at least 2-0 already now, but it's 1-1, so we shall see what happens going forward.
Yeah, that's definitely what I thought. Like, I thought the Celtics were finally gonna act like they're the best team in the league and just dominate, but they like doing this. They like just disappointing the NBA for some reason. Or I guess maybe disappoint Celtics fans. To me, I'm happy. I'm glad that they lost. I didn't want them to lose, but I didn't expect them to lose for sure. And do you think
Yeah.
the Cavs are talented enough to win a second game? Like, I know you kind of said you were hoping that they'll split it in Cleveland, but do you think they'll be able to?
I mean, I think they can, but will they? That's the question. Um, because like I think that a lot of the times when a team is able to steal one on the road, you assume they should be able to take one at home, but that's not always the case. Because obviously we saw in round one the Heat weren't able to take a single home game, and that was obviously really disappointing. Obviously they were shorthanded without Jimmy Butler, but um, I think the Cavs are capable to take a second game, but they're gonna have to find a way to try to repeat as similar as they can what they did in game two. And that's going to be a tall task. It's not going to be easy. Obviously, the Celtics are going to make adjustments and find a way to bounce back. But we shall see. I think that the fact that the Cavs are already have one and are for sure not going to get swept, though, definitely a plus. But we'll see what happens. To answer the question again, I think they are capable to take a second game. They
Uh,
just got to execute.
Okay, that's fair because if this might be controversial, but is it safe to say that the Cavs have the best player in the series with Donovan Mitchell? Because as you mentioned earlier, Jason Tatum had an inefficient first game with 18 points. Again, inefficiently got those. He had to get carried by Jaylen Brown and Derek White once again. I know we've talked about this several times, but he has such a huge luxury of relying on his teammates. Like, I saw a clip of him earlier talking about, well, we don't have a coach of the year coach. We don't have more than two all stars. We don't have like a MVP caliber player. Just basically complaining about how he they don't get the recognition they deserve, which like games like this is reasons why we don't believe in you. Like, we don't believe in Jason Tatum because he has shitty games like this. We don't believe in the Celtics because they lose to the Cavs when they should be dominating. They'll have Derek White score 25 in one game, and then Derek White in another game scored 10 points, shooting one from 8 from 3. Drew Holiday would score 14 points in one game and then 4 points in another. Like, they're so unserious. They can't like pull up their big boy pants and actually like be dominant, be able to defeat teams that they should be easily destroying. But instead, they got embarrassed by the Cavs the same way they got embarrassed by the Heat in the first round. And of course, this isn't over. Like, I'm sure the Celtics are able to defeat the Cavs in the next 3 games or whatever. But still, like, this is why we don't take the Celtics seriously. But sorry for my rant there. Do you believe that Donovan Mitchell is the best player in the series, or do you still think it's Jason Tatum, and he just had one bad game?
I believe that Donovan Mitchell is the best player in the series. And the reason is because Jason Tatum is so overrated, honestly, and we all know that. And that game one was definitely a perfect example because this guy can like have a bad game and he will get carried by his team. And as you mentioned, the luxury of having a very, very perfectly built team. This guy is like way privileged since the day he joined the league. Most lottery picks, they get drafted and they have to take a bad team way on their way up to get back to relevance. Not this guy. He joined the league immediately on an already good team and didn't really have to do much himself. It was mostly the already established players that took the charge and then he followed. But yeah, honestly, I do believe that Donovan Mitchell is a better all-around player. He is much more consistent, and I think that if the Cavs were to have any chance, it would be the fact that they have this guy, a very um, big time player, straight up bucket, and definitely could help them win certain games for sure. Um, yeah, I do believe that as far as the comments that Jason Tatum made as opposed about like not being a super team and none of the players winning awards,
Did you
that
see
was just
that?
flat out. And I did, yeah. It was flat out coping and excuse making after a loss.
I can't agree more.
And yeah, exactly. And it's like if you were to win, he probably would have said something like that too. Like we won without a super team. Oh yeah. Okay, whatever. The point is, it doesn't matter if you have a quote unquote super team. The fact is you have a very well built team. And that's the reason why you had the best record in the league. So don't make excuses now just because you lost a game in a playoff series. Own up to your failures and know that it's because you weren't the one that stepped up when your team needed you the most, and then try to be better. That's all I can say. But don't be making like super false narratives about your team not being as good as we all know it is. Yeah. But yeah, I agree that Donovan Mitchell is the best player in the series and we'll see what happens going forward. Hopefully he can put up um a lot more 40-point performances and increase the Cavs' chances of completing an upset.
Yeah, I hope so. And then one more thing before we move on, I just want to shout out a few Cavs players, like Evan Mobley. I think because Jared Allen's injured and not there, clogging the paint, like it's such an interesting situation over there because they have two incredible big men starting on their team, but since they're so similar, it's actually hurting their team. But since Jared Allen's no longer in the lineup due to injury, Mobley had a really, really good game with 21 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 steal, 2 blocks, basically doing it all. Uh, we had Max Strus playing great defense. Caris LeVert off the bench in the last game, 21 points. That's pretty impressive, especially since Darius Garland's not playing as well as I would hope he would be playing. He did better in game two, 14 points, pretty efficient, not aggressive enough, I feel like. But, like, He's like my only worry moving forward. Him and like their spacing, because I, he was an all star at one point, and he's had like 50-point games in the past, and he's shown flashes of being super fun. Like I was kind of excited to see him progress throughout his career, but he's making me nervous because yeah, he's struggling shooting the ball, and he's also not a great defender. So yeah. With that said, I'm hoping for the best for the Cavs because, as always, fuck the Celtics. Should we move on?
And agree more. Yeah, I think that would be a good amount for that series. Series now shifts to Cleveland, tied 1-1, and should be interesting. Game 3 will be actually tonight, because Saturday morning right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, believe we are good to go on to the final semifinals series, and that is the other Eastern Conference series between the number 2 seed Knicks and the number 6 seed Pacers. So far there has been 3 games played, and all of the games have been pretty close. And quite honestly, these games have been pretty similar also. Um Pretty much what happened is these teams lead shift a lot throughout these games. Usually, what happens is the Pacers will go up big in the first half, and the Knicks will come back and take a lead of their own in the second half. And then it will come close, and they will trade a lot of baskets at the end, and then ultimately one team comes out on top. Game one, Pacers had some really good, well balanced scoring. 6 players were in double digits. And for the Knicks, it was pretty good too. All of their starters were in double digits, meaning 5 players in double digits. And the first quarter was mostly dominated by the Knicks, going up by as much as 8. The second quarter was really the Pacers' show. They went on a run of their own, and they took the lead at the half. But the third quarter was really shifty, though. Knicks go on a run, take a brief lead, and Pacers go on a run, and they regain the lead. Fourth quarter starts, and it was strong for the Pacers in the beginning, who led most of the way. It was really the final 3 minutes where things changed. The teams traded baskets as well as a few lead changes. But ultimately, the Knicks came out on top, largely in part due to the Villanova trio. Brunson putting up 43, DiVincenzo putting up 25, Hart putting up 24. That ended up being a huge win for the Knicks in game one, clawing back for the win in a game that they seemed to trail for the majority of the time until late. So, shout out to them for getting the job done in game one. Game two, kind of similar. Knicks start the game hot and go up by as much as 12 early. But then the second quarter was just flat out dominated by the Pacers. And they ended up actually leading pretty good at the half. They went up 10 at halftime. Third quarter, though, the Knicks had full momentum, and no looking back from there, honestly. It was a close game for most of the fourth quarter up until the last minute of the game, really, when there's 123 left. Aaron Nesmith drained a 3 to get the Pacers to win 6, but unfortunately, this was just not enough for the Pacers. It was a downhill battle from there. Jalen Brunson hit a clutch floater, and then after that, the downfall started when Rick Carlisle got ejected for arguing with the refs, and that came after the Pacers missed a few threes, and I don't even know what happened, like why he was mad, but
Well,
pretty
he's
much
been
Pacers.
pretty mad over the calls. Like a lot of people would say from the Philly series and this series that the Knicks have been uh, having very favorable calls. I think Rick Carlisle and the
Yeah.
Pacers sent a complaint to the NBA about like
I heard about
78
that.
missed calls or something like that, or bad calls in
Yeah, that's
general.
crazy.
So I think that's why he was angry. Um,
Yeah, 78 is a high number for sure.
it's a lot. Like it's like you gotta be a true like hater slash sicko to look through all the games and pick every single bad call through those games. And like, yeah, it does suck, but at the end of the day, it's part of the game. Like it happens. Y'all just gotta step it up, which they did in Game Three, which I'm
Right.
sure you're gonna talk about really soon.
Yeah, and yeah, obviously coming up two so crushing losses, game one and game two, which kind of went either way, and Pacers probably should have won one of them, but they just weren't able to hold on. So game three in Indiana was a very pivotal game because, as mentioned, like similar to the situation that Denver was in, down 2-0, you do not want to go down 3-0 because no team has ever come back from down 3-0. And Pacers knew, so they dominated the first half. They went up by as much as 12 early, and then but then after the Knicks going in with a little bit of a run, and they took a brief lead. But then the Pacers went back up double digits in the third, and then the Knicks ended up actually going on a decent run in the early of the fourth quarter. And you thought, damn, is this series on its way to being a blowout and a 3-0 lead? Well, not so fast. So pretty much the Knicks went up nine in the early in the fourth. The Pacers knew their fate was on the line, so they clawed their way back late, and ultimately at the end came out clutch. They were able to pull a very much needed home win to pull that was in 2-1, and large part due to Tyrese Halliburton. Obviously, was in the last pretty much second half of the season after All Star break. He hasn't really been himself. A lot of low scoring performances, bad shooting performances, you name it. It just wasn't the Tyrese that we knew. But this game though, he delivered. Put up 35 points on 54% shooting. Not too shabby. And then I'm sure Pascal Siakam heard the chatter too. I mean, he was getting flamed for his previous performances. This game, he did pretty good. 26 points on 64% shooting. Not bad. And then Miles Turner added 21 points in a win. So, pretty good job by the Pacers finding a way to win this much needed game. And they will try to tie the series up in game four. And the series has been actually pretty good so far. As mentioned earlier, a lot of these games have been pretty similar format wise. I mean, the two teams going on runs respectively, and super big lead changes happening all the time. It has been really entertaining. So, game four, obviously, very crucial for both teams. For the Knicks, they would like to go up 3-1 so they have a chance to close it in game five at home. And for the Pacers, they would like to tie the series up 2-2 so that it is a fresh series, and instead of best of seven, it will be a best of three. So I expect these teams to compete hard and no different in these first three games that were just that. And ultimately, at the end, I believe better team will find a way to pull out by seeing who makes more clutch plays and get some more defensive stops. But definitely look forward to it, and it'll be fun.
Yeah, it's been pretty exciting. Like in Game Two, when it seemed like Brunson was gonna be out of the game because he had to head back due to injury, he came back out of nowhere like Superman and saved the day. I thought that was crazy. Or this today's game where the Pacers won, it was a pretty close game. Like um, it was down to the wire. Naismith hit a clutch three, and unfortunately Brunson couldn't uh, make that weird shot. He was clearly like foul baiting on his 3 point attempt, and luckily the refs didn't call it because it was egregious. It was a bad look, and the Pacers definitely weren't fouling, so he ended up missing and kind of costed the game. Kind of like he's been amazing this series, so it's I'm not gonna blame uh, one bad play, and say that he costed the game, but it's still not a good look from him. But overall, Brunson's been awesome. Halliburton, I've been saying in the first round, I've been hoping that he would be more competitive and more aggressive. And these last two games, he has been. I think in game two, he scored like 34. This game, he scored 35. In game one, he only scored 6 points. That's
Yeah,
nasty.
that was.
That's not good. That's not what the team needs. They need him to step up scoring wise because the playmaking is there. The playmaking is there. The defense isn't. And if you're not gonna play defense, you gotta score. You're the number one guy on the team. You
Sure.
gotta score. And then yeah, I shout out to T.J. McConnell. He's been doing really well, playing defense, scoring when he needs to. There's people saying that he should be the one closing out games due to his defense. So we'll see if that continues throughout the rest of the games. And then something to also look out for is that the Knicks are pretty injured at the moment. Obviously, we know that Randall is not playing,
Banged up.
Bogdanovich is not playing, but now OG is not playing due to a hamstring injury. Um, Mitchell Robinson is looking like he's not going to be playing anymore, due to an ankle injury that a lot of people are blaming Embiid because of that dirty play, but there's no real proof of that, I guess. So I won't blame Embiid, but I'm gonna look at him funny. Like that kind of seemed like it was from you. But yeah, it's not like the Knicks play every person in their bench. Like they're notorious for playing their starters mad minutes, and Josh Hart would play like the entire game except for this game. He actually went on the bench for the first time this series in game 3 for like 5 minutes, and they ended up losing that game, so maybe he's not allowed to be on the bench anymore. uh, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens from here. um, they're both pretty different teams. The Knicks play a lot slower, a lot more aggressive, a lot harder, while the Pacers are so much faster. They're so shifty. So yeah, it's definitely a cool series to pay attention to and watch. Seeing these young superstars play and ball out, it's cool. It's cool to watch. So yeah, I'm kind of done here. Anything else you want to mention before we kind of close things off? That was fast and efficient. I will say that. I think because there's less matchups to talk
Yeah.
about now.
That's because like half of the number of matchups versus round one. Round one was a handful of matchups. Overall, I think we did sum up the matchups pretty good. Um, just a quick little close recap on the Knicks and Pacers though.
Hmm.
I do believe very cool and fun how the two teams' styles are different, but they are able to mesh into forming very close games. And for the Knicks, obviously a lot of injuries and still playing really good, looking like the clear biggest threat to taking down the Celtics in the Eastern Conference. Gotta give huge shout out and definitely commend to Tom Thibodeau for finding a way to adjust. I mean, losing all those good players is not easy, but that guy knows how to adjust really well. And still to this day, like, I still say that the Bulls were dumb for firing that guy. People just assumed that he was a bad coach just because that team was like losing games. No, he isn't. He was clearly the best head coach they had in like recent memory, and yeah, he's proven that why he's still a good head coach. And yeah, shout out to him.
Yeah, love him or
But
hate him, he's
that being
amazing
said,
at his job.
agreed. And that being said, I think we pretty much summed up everything. So far the series in the second round have been pretty good. Um, by the time the next episode comes, who knows? Maybe some of these series will be over by then. Or maybe there will be a few game six, game sevens coming up. But nonetheless, we look forward to seeing what's to come. Should be fun. Season is really winding down now because don't look, it's about to be the conference finals soon. And then will be the finals. So look forward to that. But anyways, I believe that is a good recap for what we did. Thank you guys for watching and hope you guys like it.
Yeah, hopefully. Should we talk about next week's episode, or should we leave it as a surprise? Because it is gonna be different next week.
I would say leave it as a surprise would
Okay,
be
we could do
cool.
that. We'll leave it as a surprise. But I guess moving forward as well, since there's gonna be less and less games to talk about. We probably need to mix in some mini game episodes in there, or throw in some topics about like relating to the season or whatever. Just throw more things into the episode so we could at least reach an hour, because we barely reached an hour today, and this is just the second round. It's gonna be shorter in the third and finals. So that's something that we should keep in mind. Is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah, we will improvise. We'll find ways to entertain. Don't you guys worry. We're gonna find ways to have a little twist for sure. It
Yeah,
will be fun.
yeah. Mini games episode would be pretty cool to do. After talking about
For
playoff
sure.
basketball, of course.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I guess we are done here. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this rundown on the second round of the NBA playoffs. We will definitely be continue this throughout the playoffs because it's been really fun to do. And yeah, just check out our socials. I've been making TikToks. I've been spamming our shorts on YouTube recently, and one of them did really well. It got like over 3,000 views, which is crazy for us because we don't have a lot of followers. So it's kind of cool that it made that many numbers. But yeah, check out our socials. We're mostly active on TikTok and Twitter. I be talking shit on Twitter, not gonna lie. So if you like being a hater, go on Twitter. But yeah, check that out. If you haven't done it already, subscribe to the YouTube. Follow us on streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple. Give us a 5-star rating. And yeah, we are done here. So thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.